all, thank you so much. It's lovely to see some familiar faces, people I stayed with, and just to see you again. It's amazing. 3 years ago, and here you are. It's really exciting. So many of you that have supported me in different ways. So just a big thank you to everybody. This is my book. So I thought I'd start by telling you a few of these tales. And I think some of you, many of you probably already know Christopher DeGraw, who has played for me before, who's also one of my hosts on the walk, and played with me during the walk, so it's very much a part of this journey. So ready for a story? So once, in a time that was and was not, a time of transition, there was a town that was not too big, not too small, with a river running through it, and a steep, steep hill with a castle on the top. Now it was a very ordinary sort of town for those days. People drove in metal boxes on wheels to take their children to school and to buy their food from supermarkets in plastic bags. It was a very ordinary sort of town for those days. And the people in general, they thought they were happy and all was going well. Well, now came to the town, it was not too big and not too small, a man one day. A man they knew as Rob. Rob of the great renown. Well, Rob of the great renown, he came to the town that was not too big and not too small, with a tale to tell. But 'twas a tale that not many understood at first. 'Twas a tale of something that he called peak oil. Peak oil, said the people in the town that was not too big and not too small. Peak oil? What's that? Is it about a mountain, they said. For they have peaks. No, said Rob, of the great renown. It isn't. What have they done? Said the people in the Peak District. For Peak Oil were their local energy company. What have they done? They said. No, don't panic, said Rob of the great renown. It isn't about them either. Well, what is it about them? Said the people. They just couldn't quite understand. But Rob of the great renown, he knew the tale was a very important tale to tell. So he continued to tell it across the town, far and wide. He told it at the school gates when he was waiting to collect his children. He told it in a tavern over a jar or two with mates. So one day he met another man, and this man was called the Great Blessed Farmer. And the Great Blessed Farmer, when he listened to the tale of Rob of the Great Renown, and he said, at last, somebody else who understands the story. Well, so the two men redoubled their efforts, and across the town that was not too big and not too small, they told the tale. So little by little, the people, they began to listen and ask questions and get a bit worried. So, the oil, they said. The oil that makes the plastic bags that we buy our fruit in from the supermarket. I mean, it's going to get more and more and more expensive. And what about our metal boxes on wheels? Well, what are we going to do? They said. If the oil gets more and more and more expensive, what are we going to do? Said Rob, of the great renown. We are going to have a lot of fun. Fun? Said the people in the town that was not too big and not too small. Are you crazy? Well, said Rob, you haven't heard the new story. It's quite clear. For you see, when there is a challenge to be had, and people come together to talk about the problem, well, they have ideas. And when people come together, a little like you've come together tonight, and they talk together about their ideas, lots of projects are dreamt up. And people, they begin to work together. And we all know what happens when we work together, do we not? Well, yes, said the people. Well, yes. So they began to get together in clumps here and there and talk about local food and transport and why it was that cycle paths always stop just at the place where the road gets busy. And then the energy group, well, they disappeared in a little huddle, not to be seen for quite some time. But they all went off and they talked and they talked, and the more they talked, all the more ideas they had. And the more ideas they had, the more projects they began. And so it was the local food group, they began to make a big, big, big list of all the people in the town that grew local food, made things from local food, sold local food. Began to get quite excited because they realised there was so much local food in the town that they didn't really need the supermarket at all. Well, the more these people began to have ideas and do things together, the more fun they had. And the more fun they had, the more the other people wanted to join in. And the more people joined in, the more ideas they had. And the more ideas they had, the more projects they began. And the more projects that started, well, the more they worked together, and the more fun they had. The more fun they had, the more people joined in. There came then another man to the town that was not too big and not too small. And his name was Ben, Ben the White Raven. And Ben the White Raven, he came to the town that was not too big and not too small. And he said, Rob, I've heard your story. And I'm inspired. What can I do to help you? Oh, said Rob, with a great renown. I don't know. But perhaps it's a little much to expect one man and one town to change the world. Maybe, he said, maybe you could clone me. Ah, said Ben, the White Raven. Well, I know just what to do, said he. And off he went. He disappeared for a little while. He went to see a friend of a friend of a friend who had a large pot of gold pieces. the storytelling web of all storytelling webs. And they began to spread the tale all across the town and across the land too. To villages, towns, cities, forests, schools, universities, all across the land. Aye, and across the oceans too. It is said the story spread so far there were people in far-off continents and in many countries all around the world having fun. There was in the town that was not too big and not too small a certain storyteller named Winalis. Winalis heard about the tales of the people who were having fun. And she was curious. Well, by and by came the time when the nights began to draw in. A little like now. And when Alice went to sleep, and in the middle of the night, that time when you wake up, you wonder what on earth you've woken up for. 3 in the morning, it's dark, it's cold. But when Alice had a dream in jumping up and down upon her bed, when Alice tried to ignore the dreaming. No way! It's the middle of the night! What do you want? Walk, said the dreaming. If you would really hear the stories of the people having fun all across the land, you shall walk from town to town, from town to village, from village to city. You shall walk to the places where the people are few, and walk to the places where there are so many people you cannot count them. You'll walk to the places where there are people from all different nations. Walk to the places where people have lived for generations and never moved away. Walk to the great university cities. Walk to the small villages. And when you get back from your travels, said the dreamer, you shall write them up into a book, so that everybody far and wide across the land and across the oceans too shall read of the people who made a difference by having fun. When Alice went to talk to Rob of the Great Renown, and he said, well, you know, the ideas one has in the middle of the night are always the best. So we'll have to get you a raincoat, he said, and a blackberry. A blackberry, said Winalis. Wow. I mean, Winalis would pick blackberries every autumn. Down the hedgerow she would go, lots of jam and pies. Blackberries, she liked them very much indeed. But quite how Rob of the Great Renown expected her to last for 6 whole moons on one blackberry was quite another thing. All that winter, when Alice made her preparations, and little by little, the people in the town, it's not too big, just explained to Alice the wonders of modern technology. And she who loved technology came to see her friend and said, here, take this second-hand model of said blackberry and put it in the pocket of your raincoat and it will serve you well. So she did. So, spring sprung. Or so she thought. So she put on her red flip-flops, put her pack on her back, and set out to walk east. It is said that a small girl did accompany Alice as she left that town. A small girl with tiny legs and a big heart who wanted to walk with her. But the tiny legs were just a little bit too tiny. And weeping, the little girl went homeward with her mother. And when Alice set out along the green lanes to hear some stories. Well, it wasn't long before she reached a forest. Which was up and up and up and up. And when Alice's legs were screaming, "What are we doing? It's cold. And we've been walking uphill all day." And when Alice asked herself, "Well, what is it that you would rather do this day, these times?" And the answer came back true. "Well, I'm doing it." And onward she went, until she came to the fair city on the X, where they had piles and piles of books piled high towards the ceilings. And they said, "Here, we've collected the books that nobody wants. And we're sending them out far and wide across the land and across the oceans too, to the people for whom books are difficult to come by. And too," they said, "we have a dream. We have a dream that one day there will be a shop in our city that sells local food." And inspired, when Alice, though it was hailing, and the spring that when Alice had thought had sprung was actually turning rather wintry. When Alice, in spite of this, was still happy. For every day there was a new story of people having fun. So she walked. Every day she walked, and every evening there was a story. There were the people at the mouth of the Sid who'd been given a triangular piece of land. The farmer couldn't use a tractor there. And on this triangular piece of land, they'd put the straw bales for the children to play and have their stories. And they'd planted saplings so that one day there would be apple trees. "And you must come back," they said, "in a year or two, to drink the cider that we shall make from the apple trees we have planted. And over there are the raised beds," they said, "where we will plant our vegetables." And when Alice put the story in her bag and on she walked, ever walking east, following with the sea to her side, and the rain fell. The rain fell and the path became softer, a little muddier, very muddy, very muddy. Flip, flop, flip, flop, flip, flop, flip, flip. It's better barefoot, she said. And so it was that through the mud along the path with the sea at her side as she walked. Squelchy, squelchy, squelchy. Rain coming down. But when Alice's heart was happy, for the stories in her bag, there were more and when she came to the great city of Dorchester. They looked down at the large red footballs on the end of Winalice's feet. And they said, "Walk into our town, you shall not. But a piggyback you shall come." It wasn't the style that Winalice had hoped for at all. But they had tales to tell. And they had lavender oils and big cushions for feet to rest upon. And after a day or two of lavender oil and cushions, the large red footballs had returned to feet. So Winalice put her red flip-flops back onto her feet and set out. And the people, they said, "And may the sun shine on your journey." And it did. And the sun shone, and the aeroplanes stopped flying. And it was good. Very good for flip-flopped feet. Not so good for the flying machines. But every day the sun shone, the skies were blue, and flip-flop, flip-flop, and the planes, they did not fly. And the skies were quiet and peaceful. For a while, anyway. Spring was coming, and the birds were singing, and the flowers were coming out in the hedgerows. And there were stories. There were the people who lived in, it is said, the most resilient place in the land. And there, at the square and compass, the farmer's son came in with his bag of bacon on his shoulders. And they told her the tales of how it was that in their town they didn't need to transition anywhere. What they needed to do was protect what they had already. And this school, where their children could walk, was having to be protected. For they who thought they knew best would move the school so that only a journey in a metal box on wheels would get them there. Well, the people in that small town in Dorset were having none of that. Our children will go to our school where they can walk and where they will know one another and grow together, said they. And perhaps we'll hear a little bit more of that later. When Alice had far to go, she carried with her a felted tea cosy. It was a gift from the town that was not too big and not too small, to take to the gateway of the world. For in times gone by, if you wished to travel across the seas, you would go to Southampton and board your boat. And in the gateway to the world, the people there welcomed her, and she gave them the felted tea cosy and walked on. And so it was that at every place that Winalice visited, a gift was given for the next place. Now the people in Transition Southampton, when they received their felted tea cosy, well, they needed a gift to match. And they said, "Here, Winalice, take this pair of black silky knickers. These will do very well. going to make of that? They said, you must ask them who made their pants. For we have discovered in our city of many refugees that one of the things we can do to make a difference is to give work to those women who are skilled at needlework, and a purpose for all those offcuts of material. For when small children do, the patterns cut out from the middle of the fabric, the rest is slung from here to there. And they've taken the fabric and they've taken the women who wanted the work to make the pairs of black silkins. Wow. Many more tales in the storyteller's bag. There was a time when she arrived in time for a St. George's Day feast. And there were tomatoes on the menu. Tomatoes? Well, it's the asparagus season. But these are very special tomatoes. For we have discovered, said Transition Chichester, that supermarkets, when tomatoes arrive too small or too large, well, they're no good at all, so we'll sling them in the bin. So Transition Chichester had rescued the tiny tomatoes and the giant ones. And there was tomato consomme, there was tomato pate, there was tomato salad, there were all manner of wonderful delicacies. And the humble tomato became the star of the evening. Now in the fair city of London they had other things on their mind. The traffic roared. Thunder. Oh. Queen Alice came to the edge of the path, at the edge of the M25. But there were more, because there were other roads too. And each road had to be traversed. And then finally, in that great city, when Alice thought her map had made a terrible mistake, for the shops sold silks and exotic sweets with spices, and the people had wonderful colours of clothes and faces, and everyone you could see was exotic and exciting. Well, where have I come, said Alice, for this can't be the land of my birth, but look at all these wonderful, amazing things to be bought. Welcome to Tooting. And we are going to have the best carnival we've ever had. It's going to be called the Trash Catchers Carnival. And all the costumes will be made out of things we've found. And the musical instruments the children will play will make them out of things we've found. And we'll march down the streets together and celebrate. But the people in charge of roads were a little concerned. Well, what about the cars, they said. What about the lorries and the buses? Well, when Alice left the city of London without knowing what would happen, but as she journeyed north, the news trickled through that Tooting High Road had indeed been closed, and the children and the people and the music had processed down that road with not a metal box on wheels. Well, time was getting on. When Alice was going north, ever north, ever north, and in each place there was a tale to tell. But there's one special tale of heading north that must be told. It is the place where they were playing with tiddlywinks. Tiddlywinks, what are you doing playing with small plastic counters? Well, the world! We've got to save the world! Small plastic counters, but what are you doing? Ah, said Transition West Bridgeford, just south of Nottingham City. Well, you see, for every plastic gem, there's 1 hour of somebody's time. And it doesn't matter whether they're engineer, whether they're dentist, doctor, teacher, shopkeeper, dressmaker, gardener or cook. It doesn't matter if they're 14 years old and they're a babysitter. It doesn't matter if they're an old lady who is the most wonderful listener ever. It really doesn't matter. 1 hour of their time is worth 1 hour of everyone else's time. And for one gem, you can have 1 hour of anyone's time. And every skill they offer is as valuable as every other skill. And this tale stayed with Alice in her heart for many, many a long month. And she spread the tale far and wide, as far as she could, for she felt that this was a tale that needed to be adopted. Well, there were many forest gardens upon this walk. She said that the children were the best at this. They didn't want the strawberry plants to die. They didn't want the chickens to be eaten. So when it came to weekends and holidays, the children would be there to make sure that the plants and the animals were safe and well. All about the land. There were people having fun growing food together, sharing skills together, sharing their local produce. Do you want a pot of my courgette jam? Well, I might be persuaded if you'd like to take this hand-turned laburnum pendant as a memento. Well, there were all sorts of gifts that were exchanged. There was the time when coming up to the Welsh border, in the little magical place called Hay upon Wye, they told her a tale of how it was that when all the world descended upon them for their wondrous festival, in cars and aeroplanes and helicopters, they thought they probably should tell a new story. So they created a garden at the edge of the town. They said, this garden, it began the day you set out from your town. And in the 3 months that you've been walking, we've grown potatoes, carrots and onions. And we're selling them already to the people in the town. And we've already made enough rent to keep our field for another year. And we kind of wanted a piano to entertain. Wouldn't that be wonderful to have a piano playing in the garden? So off they went to get a second-hand piano, and they had it of Winalis's dream and had painted it and played music. And all the stories they kept coming in. But Winalis was walking south now. It's all downhill from here, she said. It's just easy, easy, easy. Wasn't that easy? Because there were lots of towns that had not got a transition person anywhere. And Winalis, she had to stay with people in pubs, in motorway service stations, and all kinds of rather unusual places to find a storyteller in flip-flops. And not a story to be had. It felt as if she was in a valley of despair. Winalis kept going, kept going, kept going. And soon the tales, they started again. In the city of Bath, they were starting a community orchard. And the children were picking the plums and the apples and the pears from an old orchard that the farmer could no longer manage alone. And he'd invited in all of the people to become part of his orchard. Winalis began to stand further upright again. The stories were coming back in and she could feel her heart filling with love for the people. To an old lady, and the old lady said, "I'm not a transition person. I haven't got any stories for you." "Well," said Winalis, "I'm sure you have." "Well, it isn't a transition story," she said, But on Saturday nights, around about midnight, I go out with the other older people. And we go to the nightclub. And we stand outside till 3. Waiting. We're waiting for the young people come out. Because we don't see the young people anymore, because they're in the nightclub. We're in the old people's homes. So we've gone out to meet them. And we give them flip-flops. Because girls in high heels dancing all night, by the time it's time to walk home, so when they've got their flip-flops, usually we get a big hug and they tell us how their boyfriends abandoned them. Or the girl went off and danced with somebody else. And now, when they come out of the nightclub, they're waiting for us. So they've got their grandparents back, and we've got our grandchildren again. Well, it might not be a transition story to you, but for me, that's going in the storyteller's bag. Well, by and by, Winalis came to meet a musician. I do believe he cooked her soup over a wood burner. And she thought, I wonder how it would be to tell stories with a real musician. With all these instruments, she said. Would you come storytelling with me at the storytelling festival? the tales were told in the valley of Embercoop, and the music played. Before it's too late to hear their stories. And I'm going to tell my friends, and we're going to go to those old people's homes. And we're going to find those old people. Well, when Alice knew then that transition was much bigger and wider than all of the things she had imagined. Transition was about people. It was about little people, and young people, and old people, and middle-aged people. It was about poor people, it was about rich people. It was about people from every nation in the world, remembering that it's a community that makes a difference. And we can reduce our use of oil. And we can think about what to do as the planet warms. And we can ride our bikes, and we can grow our food. And we can build more sustainable houses. And we can think about our inner journeys and whether we're learning to communicate well. But it's when we come together in groups, like this, that we can remember that it's community that makes a difference. And as when Alice continued her journey down, down into the foot of the land, as far, far west as she would go, there was a fair-haired lady. And she said, I have a gift for you. A gift from Transition Liscard. And she handed her a small, wooden, black and white zebra. Zebras, she said, are very important. They're black and white at the same time. We need diversity. We need to understand that it all works together. So take this zebra, she said, on to the next. Well, it was one of a whole collection of wondrous things that Alice had carried. She had carried a sock monster to Embercoop, presented to a little golden girl, and left that place with a CD full of inspirational music. All around the land, the gifts had kept changing. She was almost home now. There were a few more things. You see, there was a place just over the river, not so very far from here, where Devon becomes Cornwall. We're unleashing, they said. And we've planted herbs in all the flower beds in our town. And you must come and see. And so she did. And there was mint in amongst the flowers. There was chives too. I think there might even have been carrots. In and amongst the flowers all across the town. And then, almost she met a wondrous permaculture gardener who took her all around her garden and when Alice left with handfuls of seeds, soapwort was amongst them. And there were the pink fir apples too that came from Saltash. And from far, far west in the little town of Lostwithiel there was a small corn dolly. And they all went back to the town that was not too big, not too small, to be planted in the small community garden they call the Lamb, at the top of the town. Gift in exchange for the felted teacups. But when Alice arrived back in Market Square, and Rob of the Great Renown and Ben the White Raven and many others were there, as the storyteller flip-flopped back. 6 whole moons you've been on, they said. Well, you'll never guess what we've been doing while you've been walking. Come and have a look, they said. Where? Look, no, up there. You're not looking in the right place. No, you'll have to get further back, they said. Come on, look, up there, look. Back. There was the civic hall, covered from end to end in solar panels. Because we haven't been sitting around doing nothing while you were walking. We've been very busy. In fact, we wrote the longest letter you've ever seen in your life. It took us weeks and many pens. And we sent this very, very long letter to London, to they who think they know what they're doing. And they sent us some gold pieces. And we bought some panels for lots and lots and lots of roofs all across the town. So how is that, they said, for a story for your storytellers back then? So what are you going to do now then? Said the people in the town. It's not too big and not too small. Well, there's a book to write, for one, she said. But there's something else. You see, the tales of our times, well, they're not finished yet. We haven't finished yet. So wherever there is a group of people come together, well, I bet there's some stories, she said. And as long as there are groups of people and stories to collect, I'm going to be a bit busy.